Welcome everyone to the program, and thank you all for your interest in TWI. As the introductions have just mentioned, I think you're going to get a lot out of today's presentations. What I'd like to do in this first hour or so is to give an overview of the TWI programs, where they come from, and some of the connections, and in particular to follow up on what Oscar was saying. Why TWI? Why is this such a powerful program that he wishes he had, when he was facing change many years ago? And I think what we can do to begin with is to go back to what we like to call principles, and how leading people through timeless principles is really the key to success. Stephen Covey once said, principles are like lighthouses. They, we don't break them, we break ourselves against them. But they help to guide us through the rocky passages of life, and the twists and turns that life takes us through. And when we stick to principles, then we can have better success overall in life. But Stephen Covey also said there are three constants in life, and that is change, choice, and principles. We've already talked about change. Oscar pointed that out to us. Or as they like to say, the only constant that we have in life is change. So that's something that we have to deal with. But we also have two other things. We have choice. We can choose our response to those changes. And when we make choices that are based on principles are things that don't change. They stay constant through millennium. Then we make better choices. And so what we're looking at in terms of facing the challenge of a future-ready workforce is, what are those principles that can guide us through this change? And I think all of you listening would agree that one thing that employees get discouraged with are, what we call flavor of the month jingos and programs. And, we take them through the next popular thing that will hopefully guide them forward, but it just turns out to be a disappointment. And that's because we haven't focused on timeless principles that, hold true throughout generations, throughout the millennium of mankind. And I think that's where TWI has become such a lasting program, because it's based on these foundational principles. What is a principle? Principles are things that always are true. An example might be the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's a timeless principle that when we follow it, will give us good results. Things like that which guide us. And so let's take a look at what those, where TWI comes from and what kinds of principles it's based on. You may know that TWI was founded during World War II. And that was a case where they had an inspiration, to create leadership programs, because we knew during the war that all of the manufacturing for the war, the ships and the airplanes and the guns and the tanks and bullets and uniforms and so on, that manufacturing would have to take place here in the United States to supply the armies around the world. Unfortunately, though, all of the men, and they were men, who were working in those shipyards and factories, went to the war, and they had to be replaced in the majority of cases by women who had never had any job at all, much less a job in a factory or a shipyard. And of course, that's where we get the famous history of Rosie the Riveter. But the founders of TWI knew, the people who were running this wartime production knew that they would have to take a different approach than was traditionally taken in terms of how we treated people coming into the factory. They needed basically a program that was founded on solid principles that work every time, that would inspire dedication from this new workforce, in a very difficult situation, and also, of course, create those results. And so basically they needed to build a leadership program that would strengthen teamwork and guide them through these changes.
This is Liz McNichol, and Dave and I will be sharing the job relation segments of this session. We titled this session as Cultivating Skillful Leaders for Future-Ready Workforce. And Dave and I worked together when we were in Boeing for about 6 years, and that we will share some of our experience from that work as well as my experience and Dave's future experience, because we now work at different places. So begin by exploring these comments that often we heard that people leave managers, not companies. And this statement is truly backed by a research. In Gallup Comprehensive Study, they found that 50% of Americans have left a job to get away from their manager at some point in their career. And this situation takes even more significance in today's world, where the companies and the demand for people are more competitive. The questions become, what can we do about it? How can we improve the relationship between manager and their people? And one of the proven way is through job relations. So in this presentation, we will share 3 things. One, we explore the foundation for good relations. Second, the method for handling problems when it arises. And we will share case study for organization different, one government, one large corporations of implementing job relation.
Actually, before we get into job instruction, if I could just point out, just as a follow-up to Lise and Dave's presentation, and yeah, it was my great honor to work with both of them, and just sends a chill up my spine when I hear their stories about how TWI is spreading in Boeing. And in particular, I just wanted to emphasize one thing that Dave mentioned, and that is the TWI community really is a wonderful group, and I've actually recognized this throughout all my years, even going back to my Sanyo years. There's something about, I don't know what it is, I'm still trying to figure it out, but there's something about TWI that just brings people together to share and to work together, because it's a kind of a, as Lise points out, it's our common humanity, you know, that we help each other with these programs, and as Dave mentioned, there's lots of help out there. So I'm always putting together, you know, people who I've worked with in around the world. Really, I had a person last week. We were in Pennsylvania, but a woman from China came. Was just starting TWI, and I said I'd put her in touch with some of our Chinese Lego instructors who just are always willing to open up and share their experiences with TWI. So with that, now that we understand a little bit about job relations, and we talked earlier in the morning about how these things relate together, Dave explained very vividly, I thought, just what we were talking about earlier this morning, which is without respect and trust in our leadership, why would we ever follow their instructions? And so you saw some details about job relations and how it works to build communication, to build understanding, to build trust and respect between people. And you know, without good job relations, without a strong relationship, we will never get good results. So now that we've built that foundation, the next step then is to train our people, and that's where job instruction comes into play. And it's really creating this ability to quickly adapt to these emerging customer needs. So the theme of our day today is a future-ready workforce. And as Oscar pointed out in our opening this morning, when he went in one day to his plant, and the plant manager said, "Oh, we're having a new recipe. Forget about everything you've done. We've got to learn something new." You know, that is kind of the reality, I think, in any industry or any successful industry. If we keep holding on to what we've done in the past, we'll never move into the future. So what's more important than what we can, not than just what we can do now, is our ability, our capability to learn new skills, to adapt quickly to these emerging customer needs, and to be able to move forward. And so this job instruction skill is really at the core of what TWI is about. It was the first TWI program, the most popular one. It's still today the most popular program. And there's so many multiple benefits that we get from this really incredible program. So I'd like to kind of walk you through some of the details of what this job instruction is all about. And of course, remember going back to our 5 needs model, job instruction picks up this skill in instructing part. We heard about skill in leading, and then after, I guess, lunch break, we'll hear about improving methods and job methods. So let's take a look at what job instruction is. Here's our definition. Job instruction is the way to get a person to quickly remember to do a job correctly, safely, and conscientiously.
Yep, we hear you just fine. It's all good.
Okay. All right. I learned my TWI from Patrick, and he's a sensei that I've respected for decades now. And hopefully I'll be able to pass on some of the things I've learned about JM to complement what he and Liz and Dave have talked about already with the other programs. As we alluded to earlier, the 3-legged stool is 3 legs, and job instruction is partnered with job relations is partnered with job methods, and job methods is partnered with both of them. One of the things I've seen with job methods that's unique is many companies already have some continuous improvement strategies in place, and many don't see the need for job methods. But I see it as a significant complement to all of the continuous improvement effort strategies that are already in place. One of the things that most companies that I work with, both large and small, are focused on results. And one of the things that Kaizen does and or continuous improvement is to generate some of those significant results. But one of the things I learned from Toyota, from Patrick, and many others is you have to look beyond just the results and the payback, and you have to focus on the process and the people. And so job methods, I believe, is a complementary foundation to build good Kaizen principles as well as continuous improvement. And whether you're focused on problem solving or Kaizen, which are 2 different focuses with the same tools, Kaizen generally is intended to improve the measured performance, whereas problem solving is to bring a process back into alignment with your standards. But you use the same tools, and the key is whether it's value stream mapping, whether it's Kaizen, whether it's problem solving, whether it's kata, all have the basis of a gap analysis. I'm going to talk about a gap analysis within job methods as well. And the focus of it is a foundational training of people as to how to identify both the current state and the future state as we move forward. So I'm going to kind of slide through a few slides, and then I've got a success story at the end about one company that had some significant results. But I want to temper that with their main focus was to develop their people. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So I called the title of this Skills to Compete because it focuses more on process elements and developing the skills to amplify those process improvement efforts so that the company can compete.
Why should we do TWI problem solving? Now, you've heard in the last few presentations about the different J programs, the TWI job instruction, job relations, and job methods. And TWI problem solving really combines the power of these 3 J programs into one coherent problem solving method. It says at the top of the slide here, as you can see, it's a method that allows us to quickly resolve complex problems involving process and people, and hopefully to get rapid, sustainable business results. Now, The other advantage of TWI problem solving is that it integrates very nicely with any existing A3 problem solving or kata coaching framework that you might already have in place. And, really this combination of having a focus on the process side, but combining it with the people side, that really gives a new angle, a new dimension to problem solving, which currently in many problem solving methodologies, at least in the way that we are being exposed to them, is really not that obvious or present.